Paul Hudrick was in the building for 97.3 ESPN.com, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline to take a look back at the Game 2 performance of this team. And it was a couple of different games there, Paul. I mean, they get out to this big lead. Atlanta comes back. You're only up by 2 at the half. Shake Milton gets inserted out of nowhere and really carries the team. Joel Embiid had an epic performance. And through all that, if you're Atlanta, do you feel like, hey, we would have lost that game, but we feel pretty good going home?
Well, I think once Atlanta won the first game, they had to feel good. I mean, you come away with a split in Philadelphia where the Sixers have been, really extremely good over the last few years at home, one of the best home teams in the entire NBA, if not the best. So, yeah, if you're Atlanta, I think you felt good already after game one. Listen, and we talked about this before, Mike. I mean, this isn't the Wizards. This is a better basketball team. The Hawks are good. It's going to be a tough series. These games, this is the second round. Like, aside from, what the Nets have been doing to the Bucks, I mean, this is generally the way it goes. These games are going to be close. It's going to be a tight series. So, if anyone was expecting the Sixers to just kind of, walk in this and just crush Atlanta, I mean, you're seeing that is not the case. And I mean, I still think the Sixers have a great chance to win this series. I would predict that they would win the series, but the game 2 is more what I expect the series to go down, where it's, lots of runs back and forth, close through most of the game, with one team at the end really pulling away.
So what was the key adjustment last night? They hit 23s in game 1. Obviously didn't shoot the ball nearly as well. Didn't get as many looks last night. So how did the Sixers prevent these looks and cut down on the Atlanta threes?
Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle had an awful lot to do with it. They were both, they were the primary defenders on Trae Young for most of the night, and that made a huge difference. Also, they mixed their coverage up and they switched it up in a bunch of different ways. They call it like that double drag action where he gets, Trae Young gets the 2 screens at the top of the key. They didn't do it in game 1, but in game 2 they switched it and they had Tobias Harris. And listen, in that scenario, what you're hoping for Tobias Harris is just keep him in front of you. If he hits a 32-foot three-pointer in your face, you live with it. You go on to the next possession. What you don't want is him getting into the paint, either getting to his floater game, getting to the rim, or like you just mentioned, Mike, finding his shooters out on the perimeter to get open looks. And I think that is the big thing, is they didn't let Trae Young they kind of let him do whatever he wanted, it felt like, in game 1. And in game 2, they made it much, 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 much harder on him to get to the spots on the floor he wanted to get to. And again, part of that is Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle being the primary defenders, and part of it is the mixing up of coverages. I asked Joel Embiid specifically about that at the end of the game, about the way he's defended pick and rolls, which was much better in game 1 much better in game 2 than game 1. And he said what he kind of did was he was kind of playing a cat and mouse game with them, where he would show high sometimes, but then he would drop back really quick, or the opposite. He would look like he was going drop, and then he would show high. So this is the way the playoffs go, right? I mean, It's just every game's going to be different. There's going to be adjustments made. So, the Sixers made a big one. It worked out really well, and I'm sure Atlanta is going to have some big adjustments in game 3 to counter those.
You almost wonder how the Sixers thought the plan they had in game 1 was a useful one, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I said before, and I really still do believe this, I think they could have weathered that Trae Young storm in game 1 if the bench had done anything in game 1, and if they don't have 9 turnovers in the first quarter. I think they would have had a chance in that game, a much better chance. And listen, they almost did. They almost came back anyway. But I do think they would have stuck in that game a little bit longer had it not been for the poor bench play and for the turnover. So yes, Trae Young was much better, and the coverage didn't work as well in game 1. But I do think game 1 would have gone much differently. Had some other things going right for them.
Obviously, Embiid was a monster, and you talk about making adjustments. The Sixers had to adjust to Trae Young. Do the Hawks have an adjustment for what Joel Embiid is doing right now?
I mean, they've been kind of letting Capella do his one-on-one thing. In the second half, you saw them double him a little bit more, and it really didn't matter. And that kind of goes back to the idea of, throughout Joel Embiid's career, the one coach or team that seemed to always gives him trouble is the Toronto Raptors, because of their ability to double team and kind of do it out of nowhere and throw stuff at him. you see what the Hawks do when they double team him, and there's just nothing. It's not exotic. It's not surprising. It's been pretty obvious, and he's picking it apart. Either he's scoring off it because they're just giving him a little bit too much room, or he's finding teammates. You see Seth Curry had a big night last night. Tobias Harris was unbelievable early on in that game. And I don't know what the adjustment Atlanta can make is, other than getting different players. They could try different things. I'm sure they're gonna double him more consistently, and perhaps throw some more exotic stuff at him. But I don't know that they have the personnel to make it work. And then on top of that, I still think there was some weird criticism about Ben Simmons scoring 4 points, which is just beyond mind-blowing to me. But I think that what you might see is perhaps Atlanta's adjustment is that they just double Joel Embiid more, and they force Ben Simmons to be more of a scorer and get to the rim, which I think he's capable of doing.
Sure.
It's just a matter of it wasn't required in game 2, so he didn't have to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of those classic, you don't care where the points come from. I mean, he scores 4 points. He shot the ball 3 times. People are up in arms. I get it. It's frustrating because you think he can do more, or he can do more. The frustrating part is, why doesn't he? But he's saying, they didn't need me to.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a matter of what would you rather have? Would you rather have Joel Embiid, who was second in MVP voting, who averaged almost 30 points a game? Would you rather have him cook and score 40 points? Tobias Harris, who was your second leading scorer all season and had it going early. What does Ben say?
Right.
What do you want him to do? You want him to take those touches away from those guys? Or Seth Curry, who had 20 points. Do you want him to take touches away from those guys so that he can, it's just silly to me. I mean, listen,
if Embiid scored 28 last night and Simmons had 12, people would be happier.
Right, which is bizarre. Bottom line is they scored whatever they
118.
What was it? Right. So I mean, they scored more than that. They scored plenty of points. They scored plenty of points in game 1 too. So offense is not the issue in this series through the first 2 games at all. They're going to score, and I think they're going to be able to score in Atlanta through the rest of the series. They can score. It's a matter of, can they slow down Trae Young, and that's the bigger takeaway for me. If you're looking at Ben Simmons' game, the bigger takeaway is the job he was able to do on Trae Young. The free throws, listen, I get that. That's a concern. That's troubling. They hacked him. He missed 2. Doc Rivers pulled them and then put him back in. So, I mean, that is the trouble that you can worry about. That's a fair criticism. But to worry about the fact that he only scored 4 points when Joel Embiid scored 40, Tobias Harris got 20, Seth Curry got 20, and they scored plenty, that just seems silly to me.
I don't know if anybody asked Ben or Doc. I don't recall. But did anybody tell Ben, look, your job is Trae Young. Don't worry about scoring tonight. Your energy, give me 100% on that end of the court, and don't worry about the other side.
No one was really. Ben actually didn't talk last night, but Doc didn't really get asked much about it because, I mean, I think it's, for most of us, it's pretty understood, right? I mean, this is why he's in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. This is what he is here to do. It may not be what everyone envisioned when he was the number 1 overall pick. It may not be what everyone wants him to be or whatever. But the bottom line is, this is who he is. He's a really good facilitator who pushes the ball in the open court. And he's an elite defender, elite, extremely versatile defender. So just, again, it just comes back to, and something you and I have talked about all season, Mike. It's acceptance. Accept who he is, and you won't be disappointed.
Bingo.
Again, free throws. Yeah, you can't, he's got to shoot 60% at least. You can't shoot 30% on free throws in the playoffs. That can't happen.
No.
But everything else about his game, you need to just accept that this is who he is, and that this team is built for Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris to be the primary scorers, Seth Curry and Danny Green to be the shooters. That's the way it's set up.
Absolutely. We're in agreement there. Paul Hudrick, at Paul Hudrick. All right, you wrote about Shake Milton. I got a lot of questions on Shake because this is interesting. Because now what? This was the 4th highest leading scorer on this team. So it wasn't like he came out of nowhere. They used him a lot this year, and he produced. He falls out of the rotation. He's shooting shots at 10 o'clock at night. Doc says we're going to use him. But that moment last night was not a Shake Milton moment, but Doc went to him. So credit him there. But what was it that allowed him to kind of break out of this rut? Because he looked like a guy who had been stripped of his confidence. And when he made that first 3, it was like, I swear to you, Paul, watching you're at the game, so you can't see maybe as close in his face. He looked like the guy that played the Clippers on Saturday afternoon. Like, I know when this ball leaves my hand, it is going down.
Confidence is a hell of a thing. He saw one go in, and that was probably all he needed. Then he hits that 35-footer at the end of the buzzer, and that was it. And then that's when it's like, okay, maybe this is the moment he kind of turns the corner. And
so now what?
Yeah,
though?
I mean,
so now what for him? Is he over Maxey? Is he back in the rotation? We've been asking him to shorten the rotation, and now he says, no, don't shorten it. You got to put me in it.
Right. Well, it's not a matter of. See, to me, I thought what Doc did in the second half was he adjusted. And I think that's the one thing I've liked about Doc Rivers so far, even though I don't love that he has played 11 guys consistently. Yes, he might play 11 guys, but sometimes, like Shake Milton played 30 seconds in game one. He has a pretty good feel for, okay, this guy is going to help me tonight. I'm riding him. Okay, this guy doesn't have it tonight. I'm not going to him. So, like, really the only locks in this rotation, it seems like, are you're going to see Dwight Howard, George Hill, Matisse Thybulle, which I think we kind of all knew all along. The rest of the guys, it's just he's feeling it out. He's feeling which guy he can go to. Now, listen, in the first series, it made sense to go to Tyrese Maxey for a bunch of reasons. One, he was just playing really, really well. Two, the matchup. With all the speed the Wizards had and their lack of size, Maxey was a great matchup. You know what? This series, I don't know if Maxey's as good of a matchup because I don't think the speed matters as much. But the size is a concern. You saw, in the second quarter when the Atlanta bench went on the run of Gallinari and Herder kind of went nuts. Maxey really struggled to kind of keep up with the height and really challenge Gallinari and Herder. People don't realize this. Shake Milton is 6'6", and he has a 6'10" wingspan. He's not a great defender, but he is an improved defender. He's not a bad defender at all. So I think from that perspective too, I think that helps the Sixers. And I just think they needed outside shooting and they needed some scoring. And I think so. I just think it's going to change from game to game. It's going to change from series to series.
It's going to be maddening.
And I think
it's going to be maddening, right? You're going to be. It's going to be maddening because it's like one night.
Of course,
you push the wrong button. You're like, why did he go to him? Why did he go back to Shake Milton? Or oh no, I told you got to play Maxey.
But it's this is the playoffs, Mike. I mean, this is the way it goes for a lot of teams. I mean, and it's funny too because I saw this is like a little side note. I was watching TNT last night and like Charles Barkley and Shaq were kind of crushing Shake and being like, oh, this guy, like they needed those points just to win that game. And then they're gushing over Kevin Herter. Do me a favor and look up, compare Kevin Herter's season and Shake Milton's season. They're like the same player. Now, I like Kevin Herter more personally, but to think that there's this like crazy sizable gap that Kevin Herter should be putting up 20 and not missing anything, and Shake Milton shouldn't even be in the rotation. Like, no, that's not the case. Shake Milton's a pretty good player, man. I think he's a pretty good player that, as you already pointed out, I think he had a lapse of confidence. He was struggling. It snowballed. It got worse and worse. And I think I thought he was a guy that could help them going into the playoffs. He obviously struggled in round one. I think he can help them. I really do. Is he going to do what he did last night every night? No, but I think he is a guy that can occasionally give you that and be solid on defense.
Paul Hudrick covers the 76ers for 97.3 ESPN.com. He's got a lot more on the Shake Milton game over on 97.3 ESPN.com. So if Atlanta's now watching that last night, what is Nate McMillan doing the next 2 days?
I don't think he's over. I don't think he's going to overanalyze anything from, I think, like you said, he, off the top, I think he feels pretty good about, winning game one and game two coming back and making it close after the Sixers got off to such a hot start. For him, what he really you just have to he's got to keep hoping those bench guys keep bringing it. I mean, Gallinari and Herter have both been very good through 2 games, and that's kind of been the difference. Like, really, I mean, yes, Trae Young was great in game one, but to me, the big difference of why, when you see Atlanta making the runs, is typically their bench is beating up on the Sixers bench. Like, it was 32-0 bench points at a halftime last night. That's insane. And then in the second half, it was 26-17 Sixers, so it evened out, obviously. But that's, if you're Atlanta, you just have to keep pumping your bench guys up and keep hoping that they can keep producing. And then with Trae, I think they're just going to keep trying to mix things up. Show the Sixers different things. Try to run them through different kinds of screens. Put them in different spots on the floor. And also too, I thought what the Sixers did really good offensively was they targeted Trae Young a little bit. They got him in
Early.
some screens. They got him in some mismatches. And I think that made a difference too. And I'm sure Nate McMillan's looking at the tape and seeing how the Sixers did that, and he's going to try to avoid that. So, like I keep saying, it's going to be adjustment after adjustment after adjustment, and it's going to be like that throughout the series.
Early, yeah, they had him on Danny Green. Green would set the screen up top. Harris came rolling off on Young, and Young, didn't want any part of that.
Nope.
And then you have Ben Simmons down in the dunker spot, so John Collins doesn't know what to do, so he's kind of half-assing it. And there's Harris. That's why he had 16, is because he got Trae Young stuck on him for the first quarter of that game. I thought that was a great job. And Doc said it last night. I'm watching the game. I said, they just keep running the same damn play. Young is getting exploited. And we talked about how do you exploit Young? Well, they went after it. And then I thought the Sixers did a really good job of putting that second defender, making Young not get as much depth on the offensive side, so he couldn't, penetrate as much. They were sending that second defender out more, which caused him to go out more and got the ball out of his hands. So I thought it was fun watching the little chess going on last night. Both teams executed. The Sixers executed their side really well. Then Atlanta made their adjustments. They got back in. Shake kind of came in. But in the end, Joel Embiid was bonkers. Can he keep this up?
I am not betting against him. That's for damn sure. He has been unreal through 2 games on a torn meniscus. What he's doing, it's legendary. Like it flat out is. I mean, that's he set his playoff career high in game 1 and broke it in game 2. I mean, I see. Like I said, Mike, I'm not going to bet against this guy. He was the second in MVP voting for a reason. I think it's shameful that he only got 1 first place vote.
Unbelievable.
And so I mean, it's a credit to what he has done all season long. And I think it's fair to wonder too, Mike, in seasons past, and I think we talked about this the other day, when he wasn't in as good of shape, when he didn't come into camp at his peak physical condition, could he play through this injury if this were last year or 2 years ago? Yeah. Would he be able physically to be able to do that? And I think his maturation and his focus on taking care of his body, his fitness, I think that's helping him in a big way overcome this injury.
Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick. Are you there? No, you're not in there. It's in Atlanta. That's the second time I've done that. No, it's in Atlanta Friday night. We'll have the game right here on. It's funny because I'm thinking in my head, maybe I'll go to the game Friday night. And I just realized I cannot go unless I jump on a plane, and that's not happening.
I was going to say you could.
I could, yes. And so could you. You want to go? Down to Atlanta we go. The ATL. That's by the way, interesting place to play down there. You don't think of Atlanta as this tough home court. You don't think of Atlanta as much as anything. They haven't had a lot of success in a long time, but how's it, going down there? The Sixers have seemingly got to get this first one, right? Game 3 is the one you're targeting.
I mean, a split would be great. If they sweep, that would be phenomenal. I mean, quite frankly, I think if they sweep, then the series is over in 5 games. But I think splitting is what you want and then figure it out from there.
All right. We will catch up on Friday's show with Paul. And, of course, this one is all 1-1. You got 2 days off to now stew over this one, and we'll see what happens. And by the way, I guess we shouldn't take for granted that Embiid's knee could act up over the next 2 days, right?
It's not impossible. I mean, who knows? It's without any of us knowing the severity of the tear, the size of the tear, the exact location of the tear. It's hard for any of us to know exactly what he's feeling. He's clearly feeling it because he's been talking about it. He said it's limited him a little bit. We haven't really seen it, but he says it is, so I'll take him at his word on that. So, yeah, they're of course, that's always a concern. All
right, man. I will catch up with you on Friday's show. Looking forward to that as we get ready for game number 3.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks, man.
Paul Hudrick, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. He is excellent, and you should read his stuff right now at 973ESPN.com.